French President Emmanuel Macron has said Britain and France have a shared responsibility to tackle illegal migration, with the small boats crisis set to be a key discussion point during the rest of his UK visit.
Meanwhile, the UK's criminal justice system, in the headlines this morning, could be set for a major overhaul in an effort to save it from collapse. So let's discuss these issues with the Paymaster General and Cabinet Office Minister, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who joins us now. Very good morning to you. Clearly, there seems to be a rapprochement with the French. Wonderful pictures of the state banquet attended by President Emmanuel Macron. However, we have a sticky issue with the French, don't we? Because, of course, we pay millions to stop these small boats crossing the Channel, which, apart from obviously putting pressure on the asylum system, and, you know, we know there's a massive backlog there, also puts lives at risk. French don't seem to be stopping them. So we have this implication that the French president thinks there are too many pull factors which are attracting these illegal migrants. Do you think that there is a point to address here? Are we too attractive, or, in some critics' opinion, a soft touch?
Well, firstly, Susanna, very good to join you this morning. And I think the Franco-British relationship is in as strong a position as it has ever been. On trade, for example, we've seen the investment announced by EDF in Sizewell C, the nuclear power station, all about jobs and investment here in this country, working together on security and defence, particularly in relation to Ukraine. But then to come to your point about illegal migration, working closely with the French authorities is absolutely vital. That has stopped around 12,000 crossings from happening that otherwise would have happened. We've also seized 600 boats. And look, I've been down to Dover. I've been across to Calais to see that joint working that is happening. It is but one of the tools, a vital tool, but one of the tools available to us to address this problem. And to your second point around pull factors, that is why this government is cracking down on illegal working and why there have been over 7,000 arrests in that space. That is vital too, but working with other countries is crucial as well, because people end up in northern France having been smuggled thousands of miles. That's why I've recently been in Bulgaria and in Poland, seeing the joint work we are doing there upstream to disrupt the people smuggling gangs. That is hugely important as well.
Except we've got record levels, haven't we, of people getting in these boats. Last month, the Defence Secretary, your colleague, criticised France's efforts, saying it's a really big problem, quote, that the French are not stopping the boats in shallow waters. Now, this week, we saw French officials or French police actually stabbing the boats. I mean, in itself, a kind of slightly concerning action. I'm not sure if that's what you want them to do with every single boat, or whether the people in the boats will somehow get that round that as well. What more do you think, as a government, the French should be doing?
Well, we do welcome that action taken in shallow waters.
So
and that
more boats stabbed on the beaches?
Well, look, it's action for law enforcement on the beaches as to how you deal with the boats in shallow waters. And that is because we have to evolve our law enforcement capacity as the people smugglers evolve their capacity too. And frankly, we've seen this phenomenon of using so-called taxi boats going along parts of the French coast and people going out to join them. So I welcome what we've seen in terms of addressing that issue. But the law enforcement cooperation is also critical. Only in the last 2 weeks, working with our National Crime Agency, we saw 9 people smugglers in a court in Lille sentenced to a total of 64 years in prison. We saw someone in Coventry who had been convicted, sentenced in their absence to people smuggling offences, who've been tracked down again, work with our National Crime Agency.
What would you say then, Minister? What would you say then? Why record numbers?
Well, when we look at the numbers, I think it's over 21,000 so far this year. We had a period in 2022 in the summer where we had nearly that number, 20,000, in just 10 weeks. And I think what that illustrates is that there is no silver bullet to tackling this problem. It is about working internationally. It's about the bilateral relationship with France. And as I say, we've stopped 12,000 people making that crossing who otherwise would have done. But it's also about legislation in Parliament. We have legislation going through Parliament to give law enforcement counter-terrorism-style powers to tackle people smugglers. The Conservatives and Reform are opposing that. This is the hard work that we need to do to tackle this problem, not performative politics, not gimmicks, but the hard work that we need to do to tackle what is a complex issue.
Paymaster General, I'm going to switch subject now. You got Sir Brian Leveson to do a report into the justice system. That's out today. In it, he says the concern is little or no consequence for lawlessness could lead to a breakdown in law and order and society taking things into their own hands. Part of that is about getting rid of the right to a jury trial. You're a barrister by profession. Does it not break your heart that we're having to decimate British justice and get rid of a long-standing right to a jury trial? How do you feel about that personally, knowing your profession?
Listen, what broke my heart was the state of the criminal justice system when I became a minister last July. We were running a prison service that was literally at breaking point, that, yes, if you were to allow our prisons to overflow and judges literally couldn't send people to prison, you are risking the kind of consequences that Sir Brian Leveson is talking about. And our criminal justice system is under enormous pressure, and having to appoint Sir Brian, which is what Shabana Mahmood has done, and to ask him to think in this way is what we have to do to keep our criminal justice system working and effective. And, you know, you raised the point specifically, Martin, about jury trials. Did I think 20 years ago we'd have a criminal justice system that ended up in this state? No, I didn't. But we have to look at these different options. On jury trials, for example, we've always had a system where some crimes are obviously heard by juries, some are not. There's always been a balance in the system. But specifically on that, we will work with stakeholders across all of Sir Brian's recommendations and then look to legislate in the autumn. But that isn't to say we're not acting now. We already have 4,000 extra Crown Court sitting days. We've increased magistrate sentencing powers and also invested £450 million in the system, frankly, to keep it afloat from the disastrous position we inherited.
I accept that. Sir Brian says, do I want to curtail jury trial? Would I like to? No. But I would ask that the report be judged not on what I'm undoing, but on what I'm trying to protect. He goes on to say that this is because of the many financial hits on the Ministry of Justice has come home to roost. You're not increasing in real terms, cash terms maybe, the budget for the Department of Justice. I mean, one solution here is you put more funding in for a fair, for a speedy and for a just system. You're prepared, instead of doing that, to sacrifice the right to go to a jury. Is that a fair summary?
Well, no, because you'll always have jury trials in our system, as we have historically.
Not for everything. You'll lose the right for some criminal sentences that currently you can go to a jury. You won't be able to go to a jury. That's what's being proposed.
Yeah, but we've never had jury trials for every single crime. We don't have that.
No, but sorry, that's sophistry. For some crimes that you currently have a right to go to a jury for, you will lose the right to go for a jury. So there will be fewer cases where you have a right to go for a jury under these proposals. I accept it isn't universal in the criminal system, but people where they have a right now will lose that right. I mean, are you happy with that happening?
Well, that is what Sir Brian Leveson is suggesting, and now we will work with stakeholders and look at. But to your broad question, Martin, of course I'm not happy to see the criminal justice system in the position that we inherited it. We are investing and have invested an extra £450 million. That's why there are 4,000 extra Crown Court sitting days. But the state of the criminal justice system, after so many years of neglect and failure, is, I'm afraid, in a state where we do need to consider these radical proposals. That is why Sir Brian was appointed. Now, we will, of course, work very carefully with all the different stakeholders, and we'll make an announcement on this in the autumn. But people have to understand this is something that a situation none of us wish to be in. Sir Brian doesn't want to be in this situation reading his report. He's talking about necessary things to stop the system from falling over. And I cannot overemphasise what would happen if we literally had no prison places left. And the consequence of criminals going before our courts and judges literally not being able to send them to prison. That would have really profound consequences, and we just cannot take that risk.
And a final very quick question. There's talk of the government slashing the cash ISA limit to try and make more people invest. Do you think that'll work? If you cut the cash ISA limit, will more people start investing in the UK?
Well, I can't comment on specific proposals. Obviously, in terms of the Chancellor, that's a matter for the Chancellor at the budget. Of course, we want savers to be able to save, and that's obviously what the cash ISA is all about. But more broadly, in terms of investment, we are attracting significant inward investment. To go back where we started on this interview in terms of the France-UK summit, we just attracted a 12.5% stake being bought by EDF in Sizewell C.
The question was about ISAs, actually, but thank you very much
Paymaster
indeed.
General, thank you very much. We've taken a bit more time than we should have done. We appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.